Hello everyone and welcome to today's session in the Get Unstuck series. If you're here with me live, do please say hello. It's always nice to know who's made it. I know we had a lot of sign-ups for today's session. I think nearly 100 people signed up for it, which shows how important this topic is of, getting balance back in your life so that you're not feeling frazzled and overwhelmed. And hopefully today I'm just going to introduce you to a very simple tool which will help you work out what's going on for you. So if you haven't joined me before, you're very welcome to the Get Unstuck series. I created it because I know from being an HR director, I know how difficult it is during the working week to find the time to do reflection, to think about what you need, what you want, what's going on in your career. And so this is just your window every 2 weeks to have a little bit of time to think about you and what you need. I also have a podcast, the Unstuck and Unstoppable podcast, which covers the same topic. So if you'd rather listen on your commute, you can always find the topics in the podcast, and I'll put a link in the comments later. I am Sarah. I'm Sarah Archer, and I'm a career and leadership coach. And I work with female leaders to help them create career success that's right for them without burning out or selling out, feeling that they can't be authentic. And I bring a lot of my 20 years HR experience and 18 years coaching experience to these lives to help you get more from your career and create the environment that's going to enable you to thrive. And obviously that's what we want to talk about today, is that sense of thriving rather than surviving. Because I'm guessing if you signed up for the session today, you are feeling that sense of overwhelm, of just kind of having no energy, maybe coming home and not feeling that you've got the energy to do anything. You're slumping in front of the TV, kind of wondering, is this the life that I wanted for myself? What's going on? And it's very, very common. And what I'm going to talk to you today about is just how you can move from surviving, because that's what you're doing if those feelings you're experiencing, to that sense of thriving, because we want that, don't we? Because then we'll be better leaders, better parents, better partners, better friends, all of those things that go hand in hand with that sense of thriving. And obviously September is a good chance to just reflect and to think about doing a bit of resetting, changing the way you might do some things, getting kind of off autopilot and actually being really intentional about how you want your work and life to be for you. And I'm going to give you this technique today, this lovely technique that you can use to help you work out what it is that you particularly need. So I'd love to know if you are here with me and that's resonating, if you are feeling that sense of overwhelm, of feeling like you just can't take another thing on, then please do let me know in the comments if you feel comfortable doing that. It would be great to know that this is kind of resonating for people. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about a client that I worked with probably about a year ago or so, maybe longer than that helped me then find this technique that I'm going to share with you today. So this client, she was a senior leader, and she was just finding that everything was kind of overwhelming. She was in a very demanding job. She had a demanding home life. She never stopped moving. She'd got a primary school age child and a teenager, and she just felt that she was coming home, she had no energy, she just slumped in front of the TV every night. And she just felt if there was one more thing added to her life to-do list, she was just going to snap. She was like an elastic band that had just been stretched that little bit too far, and she was just going to snap. And she just knew it wasn't going to be sustainable for her. And maybe that resonates for you. Maybe that's how you feel about things at the moment. And what I did with this client is I found this technique called the 4 rooms of life, which I'm going to talk you through today. And it was a concept that was created by a novelist called Ruma Godden, and I'm going to put a link to a blog that I wrote about this in the comments too, so you can read about this if you want to as well. And it comes from an Indian proverb that she found, which basically said that everyone is a house with 4 rooms: physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental. and that most of us tend to live in one room. Quite naturally, we're just drawn to one room over the others. But unless we go into every room each day, even if it's just to open the window in the room to air the room, we're not going to feel a sense of completeness. We're not going to be able to kind of fully nourish ourselves. And it's just a nice framework to be able to realise what's going on for you and why you're maybe feeling the way that you're feeling. And when I worked through it with this particular client, she immediately recognised herself. She was living almost entirely in the physical room. She was constantly doing without any time for reflection, connection, or that kind of mental stimulation beyond kind of her work demands. And she'd almost forgotten the other rooms existed. And when we mapped out those 4 rooms, she could see exactly why she felt so imbalanced and what was missing for her. And I'm hoping as I talk you through this exercise, you'll be able to see what's going on for you. So first of all, I'm going to talk you through the different rooms and what they mean, and then I'll tell you about the kind of very simple way that you can do this for yourself. But what you could do just now is to think about, where am I thinking that I'm spending most of my time at the moment? So the 4 rooms, we've got the physical room. So this is kind of all the doing. So work tasks, household chores, errands, caring for others would all be in here. But also things like exercise, nutrition, hydration, dancing, gardening, all of those kind of physical things would be in there as well. So some of the things you might feel are really positive in your physical room, and others you might be thinking they're quite draining in my physical room. Obviously the physical room is essential, but it can be overwhelming, and if you feel that there's so much in your physical room, there's no space for anything else, then obviously something's got to change. And the signs that you're maybe stuck in your physical room are that sense of constant motion, exhaustion, and not having any time to think, just that almost cognitive overload. Then we've got the mental room, which is all about kind of cognition. That's your kind of learning, problem solving, intellectual stimulation, planning, creativity, feeling inspired, all sit in the kind of mental room. And so that's not just work thinking, because obviously you will get intellectual stimulation from your work, I'm imagining, but it's also about personal growth, reading, time to do things like puzzles, strategic thinking, maybe listening to podcasts that are inspiring you or challenging your thinking, TED Talks, going to exhibitions, just experiencing things that are going to change your perspective and get you to think differently. Signs that room is neglected is that sense of feeling mentally stagnant, that you're not learning or progressing, maybe feeling unchallenged beyond the kind of work stress. The emotional room is the next one, and that is where we process our feelings, we connect with others, we can express emotion, we can experience self-compassion, we can be creative, so maybe that creativity is connected to your emotional output, maybe it's listening to music that stirs us, feeling joy would be all sitting in the emotional room. And that can be things like time with loved ones, quality time with loved ones, therapy, journaling, crying, laughing, all of those things that connect us to our emotions. Signs that you're neglecting that room might be feeling a bit numb, a bit disconnected, or even emotionally reactive, where your emotions just feel like they're really close to the surface and you can be really triggered very easily. Then we've got the spiritual room, and that is often the room that we maybe pay less attention to. So it's just that sense of connection to something bigger than us. It doesn't have to be religious, but it could be religious. It could be connected to nature, to your values, your sense of purpose. It could be about meditation, gratitude, that time in nature, community service, those kind of things. Maybe it's also experiencing that sense of awe when we just notice something that makes us realise how big the universe is. I remember the Northern Lights were visible last year, I think it was, and it's just when you see that, you're like, oh my goodness, wow, that's that sense of awe. Signs that this room is neglected can be feeling empty, purposeless, disconnected from your values. So having just heard a bit more about each of the 4 rooms, I would love to know if you can immediately sense which room you're spending most of your time in, and maybe which room you're feeling less connected to, possibly neglected. And the way that you can then kind of go deeper on this, it's very simple, is just to take a piece of paper, and you can always watch this session again on replay, so you can pause it, take a piece of paper, divide your paper into 4 quadrants, and then obviously just put the title of each of the rooms at the top, so physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And then what you want to do is just list what activities you're doing that connect you to each of those rooms. And we're thinking daily basis, really. So what you're doing on a daily basis that connects you to each of those rooms. And as you make that list, obviously you're going to see which rooms you're spending most of your time in and which rooms you're not really spending any time in at all. And then when you've done that, what you can think about doing is taking a different colour and coming up with ideas that would be you connecting to the rooms that you're not spending enough time in. So say, for example, it's you're noticing you're not spending any time at all in the spiritual room. So it might be, that connection to nature is something that really makes you feel that sense of awe and spirituality. And so you might have an idea about what connects you to nature and what that could be in your room. And remember, with this, we're just talking about airing the rooms. We don't want to have lots of other things we've got to do. It's just something that's going to connect you to that room on a daily basis. So, for example, my client that I was working with, remember, she was kind of mostly in the physical room. So what she came up with was then ideas about how she could create space. So how she could reduce her time in that physical room. And they were very practical things. So there were things like doing an online grocery shop, negotiating with her partner for him to cook at the weekends, hiring a cleaner, delegating some tasks at work. So just so that she could stop that sense of I'm doing all the time. And then what she identified in terms of her ideas for things in the other room was morning walks for that spiritual connection, evening reading for mental stimulation, weekly coffee date with friends for that emotional connection. So it's looking for ideas that you could easily put into your life that aren't going to add to your to-do list, but also thinking about habit stacking as a technique as well. So if you've already got a habit that you do, it's adding something to it that means you don't have to create a new habit, you're just stacking on top of the existing habit. So for example, if in your physical room you have to walk the dog every day, that might be thinking, okay, so I'm just walking the dog around the block because I don't have much time, but actually what I'm going to try and do is actually take the dog to the park so I can connect with nature while I'm on my dog walk. So I'm doing something physical, but I'm actually going to connect with nature and air my spiritual room doing that. Or maybe while I'm walking the dog, I am going to listen to a podcast that is going to change my perspective on something. So it's going to connect me to the mental room. Or it could be if you're commuting every day and you're just kind of falling asleep or, drifting into space on your commute, maybe you're going to choose again to start a gratitude practice on your commute every day. You're going to put your headphones in, put some background music on or white noise, and just start noticing things you feel gratitude for and writing them down in your phone or in a journal if you have. So it's thinking about ways to make it easy for yourself to add in the things that you are going to need to bring that nourishment. Because what we're talking about is you finding energy from something else to support you in that sense of overwhelm and exhaustion. So remember, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have got to bring things in to nourish you, to then be able to support other people, to lead other people, and to look after yourself, essentially. So what I would encourage you to do is tonight, ideally, is just to do that very simple exercise I've just talked you through, so that you can start to see where you're out of balance and what you can do to just enable yourself to get something that covers spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. So all your needs are being met, but without it becoming another thing to do on your to-do list. And the great thing about this exercise is that you can come back to it. Whenever you start to feel a bit out of balance, you can just start to think, okay, what room am I not engaging with, where I perhaps need to bring something more into my daily, weekly practice to do that. So thank you for joining me. I hope you found that useful. I'd love to know how you got on. So please do let me know. But I'm going to put the link in for the blog about this particular exercise, and also a link to my podcast. So in case you wanted to kind of connect with something to get you thinking differently. And I really do hope that you manage to find ways to visit each of those rooms every day, so that you are nourishing yourself, you're giving yourself energy, and you're setting yourself up to be more successful in work, but also in life generally. So do join me. I'm back in a couple of weeks for another session, and I look forward to hearing all about which rooms you managed to spend more time in. Have a great rest of the week.